Because you won't stand together.
That's impossible.
Why? Why is that impossible? You're so concerned with squabbling crap that you've missed your God-given right to something better. There's a difference between us. You think the people of this country exist to provide you with position. I think your position exists to provide those people with freedom. And I go to make sure that they have it.
Whether you voted for Bernie or Trump, I think we can all agree what we really did was vote against the system that rules America today. And so our rejection of this corrupt system is the only bridge that connects we Americans back together again. Because it is the system that is the source of all inequality, the destruction of the middle class, and endless war. It is a problem that can't be fixed, a swamp that refuses to be drained, and so our entire governing system must be changed. Today, our government rules over the people through the centralization of power. And so the touchstone of my campaign for Congress is to end this centralization and build a bridge of decentralization to bring all Americans back together again so that we can all live the dream by restoring the structural daily operating model of decentralization in our government as outlined in our Constitution. Our problem is structural in nature, easily identified and rectified by passing 2 laws and 1 amendment into law. This ensures and provides for our rule over our government because it is the people's rule over their government that defines a state of liberty, and freedom is its byproduct. Only if we restore the people's rule over their government can we restore the people's faith in that government. My campaign is based upon 2 bills before Congress today that enjoy great support but require relentless action to pass into law. Action I pledge to apply. I augment these 2 bills with term limits, wildly popular with almost every American, excluding most members of Congress. Together, I call them liberty legislation. The initial bill, the REINS Act, has already passed the Senate. It requires that all agency laws must pass through the lawmaking procedures in the Congress. 90% of the laws we live in under are created in one executive agency or another, and all powers of review are held exclusively by the very Orwellian White House Regency, the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, or the OIRA. As shown in this chart of how laws are sold in America, this has created an imperial presidency our Constitution never intended and plays a large part in the failure of government today. Our Congress is supposed to represent the people in our government. The problem is our Congress has few powers left. And because Congress is the people's place in our government, we the people have no powers either. In fact, there is no separation of powers in America today, with bureaucrats, too big to fail banksters, CEOs, and their lobbyists all vying for what has become super constitutional executive powers that have left Congress little to do, except to get involved in everyone else's business. This is why Americans no longer trust our Congress. It no longer does its job and is no longer an open, transparent, and deliberative lawmaking body. Instead, it has become a cabal of grocery clerks mediating between an oppressively bloated government and its constituents. Deprived of power, Congress has usurped the 10th Amendment and the powers of the 50 states, squeezing any remnant of power back into the unholy confines of Washington, D.C. And it is no small wonder that President George Washington warned us all in his farewell address in 1796 of the dangers of allowing the powers of Congress to be usurped to any public or private agency because, in Washington's word, these powers will always end up in the hands of cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men, admonishing the nation further. This is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. Well, this describes America today. It is this system we the people have rejected in our recent vote, and it must be replaced with a state of liberty where the people must rule over their government in order for America to survive. A prime example of this culpability is Obamacare, or ACA, or what I call Oh, Be Careful. I understand the people are generally in support of a health care safety net, yet, while Congress theoretically wrote and physically passed the 1,250-page Affordable Care Act, that no one read. The final 10,535 pages of rules and regulations were written by Health and Human Services and the lobbyists of big insurance, big pharma, and healthcare giants. Obamacare is aptly named because it is a law paid for by campaign donations, paid into the DNC to find favor within the White House regency of the OIRA during his imperial presidency. Quite simply, when you get down to it, all O.B. Careful did was to institutionalize an accelerating profit center for insurance companies, big pharma, and the medical service community at extortionist rates. How else can you explain why America spends 17% of its GDP on healthcare, where the rest of the developed world spends 8% and everyone is covered? Yet 30 million Americans remain without insurance, and Obamacare Light, pushed by the Republicans, changed nothing short of holding down price increases by adding 22 million more Americans to the rolls of the uninsured. If you like your insurance, you can keep your insurance? Are you kidding me? Healthcare costs have skyrocketed, and full coverage insurance went from small deductibles to high deductibles, providing only catastrophic insurance for everyone. And everyone didn't get covered. We all know there's got to be a better way. But I can guarantee you healthcare will remain a disaster as long as the swamp remains full and our corrupt system of government of rule over the people is allowed to continue. If you want healthcare that works, the first thing we need to do is change our system of government to one where the people rule. Only then can a healthcare system that serves all the people be attained. Otherwise, healthcare is a losing proposition, no matter which side of the Republican-Democratic dialect you've been sold. Yeah, it's the ancient illusion called divide and conquer. The second law before Congress, I will dedicate myself to sponsor and pass is House Bill 24, the Federal Reserve Transparency Act, and I will see it through passage into law. All the Fed's powers are a power of our Congress. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 5. Yet it is governed by 14 officials with only 7 voting members, 3 of which have a permanent vote, being the chair, vice chair, and the New York president of the very private Federal Reserve Bank. And there is absolutely no way for the people to rule their government if we haven't got control over the creation and distribution of money. And if you think the Fed is run by highly educated sycophants at the behest of career criminals, well, you're exactly right. Ron Paul is the father of H.R. 24, and most recently, H.R. 24 has been championed by both Ron Paul and Bernie Sanders. Having passed the House 3 times over the year, it failed each time in the Senate, but now there are enough votes to pass it in the Senate. So the real fight for H.R. 24 is in the House, where the banksters and Fed are working hard to kill it. H.R. 24 authorizes $5 million audit of the private Federal Reserve Bank's recent too-big-to-fail bailout programs since 2010. It's doubtful the Fed can survive such an exposure because of the avarice and criminal greed committed by the corrupt Fed and the too-big-to-fail banks. Employing over 1,000 PhDs in economics from the finest Ivy League schools, no one at the Federal Reserve Bank was able to forecast the crash of 2008. Yet ever since, the Fed's monetary policy has been an experiment without a solution, and confirmed by former Dallas Fed President Richard Fisher with a refreshing, honest observation that we injected cocaine and heroin into the system to enable a wealth effect in the economy, and now we're maintaining it with Ritalin. Their policies have destroyed the people's savings, pension funds, and the creation of real wealth in America through their zero interest rate policies, ZIRP, and quantitative easing, QE1, 2, and 3, creating fiat funny money out of thin air to rescue insolvent, too big to fail banks and help corporations to buy back their stocks. And this is what's kept the markets elevated for the last 10 years. Its chairperson, Janet Yellen, has recently declared we will not see another economic crisis in our time, while sleepwalking America into a tumult that will make the crash of 2008 seem like the good old days. According to former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, 78% of the American people live paycheck to paycheck. 76% of Americans believe the government exists in favor of the rich, which isn't too hard to believe when the top 1% of Americans own as much as the lowest 90%. The average American household has a net worth 14% less than it did in 1984, while the average American's real take-home pay has not increased since 1971. And it's no surprise again the middle-class America has been eviscerated, and the term living the dream has become a punchline to a dark joke of America's frustration and despair. we Americans need to come together and restore that American dream. Today, Goldman Sachs infests both our government and the private Federal Reserve Bank, while the Department of Justice and regulating agencies weaken an endless parade of criminal RICO Act violations by criminally rogue banks like Wells Fargo, which habitually fleeces their clients with no fear of criminal prosecution, only fines, but only if they get caught. And so the theft and corruption goes on and on. And just as in the false world of economics is destroying America, it has also given rise to synthetic and surrogate fake news until there is no reality to anchor the nation. Is it any wonder the morality and ethics of our society have fragmented and America has become a nation divided, citizen against citizen, to a level not seen since our great Civil War? Again, it's the law of tyrants. Divide and conquer. Clearly, both the battle for H.R. 24 and the REINS Act must take place in the House of Representatives, and I am the only candidate in this race who will sponsor both and dedicate themselves to seeing these two bills into law. Further, I will put fire into the enactment of term limits through to an amendment. Together, they dismantle our parasitic government from access by the aristocracy to both the power to make laws and create money, all to the ruin of America today. It is the only way we can set ourselves and all Americans free. I pledge to you now and forever to see these two bills and term limits, which will cement the rule of the people over our government, through to their passage of law. As President Washington said, liberty, once taken root, is a plant of rapid growth. This is what made America great, and liberty is the only means by which America will ever be great again. It is our birthright, but only if we will come together, because there is only one person who can make America great again. That is the man and woman in the mirror. America is nothing without you. If you're fed up with our government, its lies, its endless wars, and the economic hardships and inequalities we all suffer that go hand in hand with its hopeless corruption, join me. During this campaign, I will be sharing with you through my website, electfawell.com, in video, in pen, and in visits to your town, the details of what we must face together and their solution, some of which I have shared with you here today. I only ask you to consider them with an open heart and an open mind, and in return, I will listen to you with the same open heart and the same open mind. Together, we can light a beacon to all Americans, elect a new Congress in heart and mind, and restore our government back to you, her people. In closing, I ask you, my fellow Americans of the 17th Congressional District, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Green, and everything in between, to take time to reflect upon America and the dangers we all face together. And if you see merit in what I propose to our collective liberty, freedom, and security, please join with me and place both your confidence and your vote in me. I promise you, I will never let you down. God bless America and everyone in it. Thank you.